Can you take us back to the day of the accident?
Yeah, that morning was pretty normal. We filled up the plane, did the charts, looked at the weather while we were taking off. The door opened up and just panic started to set in. I'm holding the controller and I remember I just couldn't control my body at that point. My face just slammed into it and then just black. And then I wake up and it's just fire everywhere. Aloha and welcome to the SickBurnPodcast, where we explore the bright side to life's darkest moments. Today we're doing something a little different. First off, thank you all so much for your continued support. Our little podcast is growing, but it still needs your help. So if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend, a family member, a coworker, or even a stranger who could use a little inspiration and hope. Every bit helps, and your support truly means the world to us. A lot of you have asked to hear more about my story, and I realized I've never really told it in full here. So I'm stepping back from the host chair and turning things over to someone very close to me.
Hey everyone, Cristina Craig here, and I'm honored to be the guest host for this week's episode of the SickBurnPodcast. Today, I have the privilege of interviewing my husband, Thomas, the Oakley rep turned pilot, plane crash survivor, burn survivor, amputee, and my personal hero. Thomas wasn't expected to survive the accident that changed his life forever, but he did. Not only did he survive, he came back stronger, more grounded, and more determined to help others find light in their darkest moments. Join me as we walk through the crash, the recovery, and the powerful mindset shift that's now inspiring people around the world. It must be kind of weird for you to be on the other side now. You're just looking at somebody else in your host chair, huh?
It is so weird. This doesn't, I thought this would feel more comfortable. But, it's not. I don't know if it's just in my head that makes it feel uncomfortable or it's knowing that I'm on the other side of the questions.
Yeah.
Which I don't like.
Yeah. Well, I, for one, am excited to be here. And yeah, I think the podcast has done so amazing so far. But I think the most common question and feedback that you keep getting is, I want to know what your story is, Thomas. I want to hear what you went through. Would you not say that's true?
Yeah. Oh, it definitely is. So, let's go back to, I was born in.
No, I'm not doing that.
For sure.
Guys, this would be a 16-hour episode if we did that. So
I think I could do it. I think I could Cory Booker this thing.
Yeah.
But no, it is one of the biggest feedbacks I think I've been getting. And I'm really thankful that you could join me today. You got to live through this whole journey from the other side of the coin. And I think it's just kind of been amazing to hear, what you've gone through and your perspective on it. It's so interesting because, obviously I kind of lived through this thing, but you were living through it too. It was very tough on you too. I don't think it should be not talked about in the fact that, caregivers go through a lot as well. So I just really appreciate that you're here with me and so thankful that I get to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm really thankful too. And I think, we'll get into it, but I think there's maybe a lot that you don't remember due to coma reasons, but I think maybe I can help fill in some of the gaps. But yeah, I think maybe just to start out, you can kind of just take us back to the day of your accident. If you want to go through what your morning was like or just set the scene for us. But actually before you answer that, I want to just provide a little bit of background context. I think that's important. You had finished up flight school in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
You'd worked your ass off for a year and I saw you grinding through it. It was grueling.
Yeah, I always say that was my master's. I was after this, I am never going back to school. I am done. That to me felt like the hardest amount of anything I'd probably done up to that point. And non-physically. Well, I mean, there's physical elements to it too, but just from a mental and from a willpower standpoint.
Yeah.
Just because it's so much studying mixed in with the flights and everything. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that was probably the thing I was most proud of up until that point in my life was graduating from flight school.
Yeah. Definitely a lot to be proud of there. I was super proud of you too. But yeah, so I think, after that really tough year, we decided, we want to move back to California.
Mm-hmm.
We settled on San Diego. I think maybe for both of us, San Diego is always kind of like a dream city of like, that'd be so cool to live there.
Yeah.
So just got in our first place, just us together.
Our little like shoebox, as someone called it.
Yeah.
It was like one bed, one bath, and like just moving from Colorado there, like everything was filled up.
Yeah.
Like every nook and cranny of that place had stuff in it.
I loved it though, because it was ours, and
Yeah.
we had Lucy there with us, our first dog, and
Yeah. It was just like a little north or like up from Balboa.
we could
And
walk
yeah,
there
we
every
would,
day.
yeah, when I was done with like all the flights, or if I didn't have like night flights, yeah, just us walking with Lucy to Balboa. It was cool. Like it was definitely
Yeah.
like, oh wow, we're doing it. Like we're living the San Diego life now.
We had a good setup, and so we had been there for maybe like 3 or 4 months, probably. I think we moved in there
Yeah.
in June,
Yeah.
and then come September is when your accident happened. So
Hmm.
yeah, I just wanted to provide that little background. But yeah, can you take us back to the day of the accident? Kind of what was going on,
Yeah.
where your head was at.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was a pretty normal kind of setup. The only thing with it was that, it was a little bit earlier. For flying, the plane performs better when it's cooler and when you're closer to sea level. And then, the higher and hotter you are, the worse the performance is. And, we knew that we were going to Las Vegas. So I was like, all right, well, we got to try to get there early so it doesn't get to like 100 degrees. And, there's some mountains you have to get over in order to get from El Cajon, San Diego. You cross kind of like a little bit of a desert, and then you eventually get into Las Vegas. We were flying into Henderson Airport though. And that morning was pretty normal. We filled up the plane, did the charts, looked at the weather. All of that was pretty standard, I feel like, for the most
Right.
part. There wasn't really any issues kind of getting there from what I remember. Just a very normal flight. But there was this moment where some of the passengers were supposed to kind of do something at that airport, and it didn't go that way. So then we knew that we had to kind of readjust and figure out where we were going to go and what we were going to do from there. And the decision was kind of made begrudgingly, and not to me and my students' liking, but basically we were going to have to fly back to San Diego. We had originally planned we were going to get dinner in the city.
Right. I remember that.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
I think I called you at some point.
Yeah. We had a FaceTime call midday, and I was up visiting my parents that weekend because it was my cousin's going away party he was going to basic training for the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I remember talking to you, and I was showing you Lucy, and how she'd do her little bunny hops in my parents' backyard.
Yeah.
And
The lizard hunter.
yeah. And I just remember you saying like, yeah, just like so hot. And I think we're just going to have to keep waiting it out.
Yeah, it was about to get hotter though.
Yeah. And I remember you said like,
Sorry.
oh, I get it.
Little,
For you,
dark,
I guess.
Yeah, just specifically for me, yes.
Sometimes your dark humor just like goes over my head, and then I'm like, oh, that was a burn joke.
Yeah.
But anywho, I just remember you saying like, yeah, like, something's kind of off. And, the plane's like, I don't think it can, we have to wait. And I just remember you saying that, and that
Yeah.
it kind of freaked me out a little bit, but I feel like I had heard some scary stories about some flights previously. So I was like, okay, I think you're an excellent pilot. So I was like, I'm not worried. Like, even though it sounds freaky to me, I'm just a random non-pilot. So what do I know? But
yeah, I mean, still probably one of the smartest people I know. But yeah, it was one of those things though, where you look over all of your charts, all of your instruments, like things are looking correct, right? But there was a feeling all day of like something feels weird, and I couldn't put my finger on it. It all just felt like a little off. Maybe that's just how I feel in retrospect. Maybe it's more apparent to me now since I've had so much time to reflect on it. But as we were going through the day, everything seemingly looked correct. I did the weather. the charting for it, I don't know, more times than I had ever done it for any day. And I'm like, what is going on? Like something is just not right.
On paper, everything was looking great.
Yes, exactly. On paper, everything looked awesome. And to kind of fast forward, we kind of came to the conclusion. Again, it was just kind of unfortunate. There were so many things that could have went left, but instead it went right, or maybe vice versa. It was just really weird. I don't know how else to explain this feeling. It makes me think now that you have to kind of trust that feeling more, and especially in myself.
Right.
There was so many times where I'm like, maybe you just feel awkward about it, or I didn't want to be a burden, or not be able to get something done for somebody. But yeah, that's kind of the conclusion. It was like the people that were flying with us basically needed to get back to San Diego.
Right.
And so we're like, okay, well, everything looks right. It's not like we really want to leave, but we should. And yeah, on that flight while we were taking off, the door opened up, and just panic started to set in the plane. And I was not flying the plane. I was sitting in the right seat, and I was kind of monitoring things, and things looked fine. But like I said, right as we were about to rotate or lift off, the door opened up. And I've had doors open up on me before in flights, and it's like, it's freaky in a sense, but it's not like overly scary. You're just like, all right, we'll just lean over and shut the door. Like, I'm sure,
And this was kind of an older plane too. I'm sure
yeah.
sometimes things like that
Mm-hmm.
are more apt to happen in older planes, maybe.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah. So many different things you could probably
Sure.
pin it on, but yeah, I mean, it opened up, and then I could just feel panic starting to
Yeah.
settle in, and just, yeah, you can kind of see it on people's faces. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take over my controls. I take over. And as soon as I grabbed the controls, just my heart sank, because I could just feel like something wasn't right, and it wasn't lifting off. And I was like, oh man, this is interesting. And I don't remember doing this, but I guess there's a record of it. But calling the tower and saying, hey, we have a door that opened up, hey, is it all right if I didn't use these wording, but basically it was like, hey, we have an emergency. We're gonna have to come back and land. And yeah, we never made it back. It was, I felt like I was doing in the moment everything I was trained to do and trying to keep the plane in the air, but it was just sinking.
Right.
I was specifically looking at my altimeter, and it was just like sinking, and I was like, what the heck is going on?
I know you said you just had that sinking feeling when
Mm-hmm.
you were kind of like just feeling how things were going. Was there anything going through your mind other than just like, I need to like figure out like where to put this? Or were you thinking anything else?
Whew. Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, so much of this, from the time we lifted off to the time the paramedics came, it felt like instinct.
Right.
It felt like, I mean, to use a bad pun, maybe, I mean, it just felt like autopilot.
Yeah.
And yeah, if I can put words into any thoughts I had, was keep this plane in the air. Okay, this plane isn't staying in the air. All right, where are you going to set this down?
Yeah.
And I remember kind of quickly looking over all the instruments, and I'm like, everything looks right except for we're sinking. And then scanning the window quickly and just seeing nothing but like boulders and rocks. I went left to right across the window, and I was like, yeah, there's nothing good to land this thing on.
Right.
And so I'm like, all right, just set it down gently.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the last thing I really remember was, I was bracing for impact. And I talked about this with Neil on his episode,
Mhm.
and he talked about it too. There's a moment where you're about to make impact. I think people have this in car crashes too, but they always say, the person who survives or ends up the best is the person that kind of relaxes.
Mm.
And there was this one conscious thought that I had, which is like, this is happening, relax. And I
Wow.
totally just let my body kind of go limp and just relaxed. And I think it truly did kind of save my back,
Yeah.
because like, even though I fractured a bunch of things in my back, and I think we'll probably talk about it as we get into the hospital recovery,
Right.
but I really did just kind of relax right before impact. And I think my back would have been even more broken if I just tensed.
I agree. I don't think that's most people's natural tendency, like in an accident of that nature, even like a car crash, like I
Hmm.
think your natural inclination is to like tense up and,
Yeah,
that's maybe where people end up getting more injured. But yeah, I think that kind of saved you.
totally.
Do you remember like getting out of the plane?
So last thing I remember is we land. I mean, more rough than any Disneyland ride. Like think the Indiana Jones ride times a million, right? And it we make impact.
Jeez.
I'm holding the controller, and I remember like I just couldn't control my body at that point. My face just slammed into it, and then just black.
Mm.
And then I wake up and it's just fire everywhere. And it was crazy because it was like a movie. Actually, the first thing I remember was, it was a hazy focus. It's almost like a movie where the focus was dead center in my vision. And then it starts to like come back. But the dead center of it was just like blood dripping on me. And it was like blink, blink, blink. And then all of a sudden my vision starts expanding and it starts coming back to me. And then the sound started coming in and then the fire everywhere, and and I could hear screaming, and instantly it was like, again, like there was conscious thoughts, I think, but my body was just moving.
Right.
I remember this thought though. I was like, if I don't get out of here, no one's getting out of here. And just the way the plane was set up, but I don't know, I just felt like that. I don't know why.
Right.
And hit the seatbelt, pull the seatbelt off, open the door, run behind the plane. And there's a moment where I'm looking back at the plane, and I felt like that I was kind of like in this tunnel thing. And if you look at the pictures of the crash, there is a little like storm drain
Mm-hmm.
that I was probably ran to. And then I'm looking back at the plane and I was like, crap, nobody got out. I remember thinking like, you have to run back to this and like
Mm-hmm.
see if you could help somebody get out. And I start running back to it, and then I hear this voice. And some people could say, "Oh, it's an angel" or whatever. We know that it was a person now, but that was like, "Get down! You're on fire! You're on fire!"
So you didn't realize at the time that you were on fire.
Not at all. Like I didn't realize I was. I knew I was hot,
Right.
but I couldn't tell that I was on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I was more afraid, and they were like, stop, drop, and roll, stop, drop, and roll. And there was all these rocks, like I said, we're just like in the middle of, the Nevada desert
Right.
outside of the airport. And I was more like, I thought it would hurt worse to roll in the rocks than it was that I was on fire.
Yeah.
And so I was
I
like,
mean, you're
I'm
not
not
thinking rationally. So.
no, like again, like it's just there are rational thoughts popping up, but my body is just moving. Like it was the weirdest thing. And so I do it. I'm like, no, you got to stop, drop, and roll. So I stop, drop, and roll. And then after that, I ended up on my back. And as soon as I ended up on my back, like from the neck down, I couldn't move. My
Hmm.
whole body was just paralyzed.
I actually got to talk to and meet the Good Samaritan, the guy who, when you thought you heard the voice of an angel,
Mm-hmm.
he reached out. I don't know. The accident was like all over the news. It was, you know, kind of traumatic to hear. Like they put your radio call back to tower, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I heard it and I was like, that's his voice. Like, and you
Oh, wow.
sounded so calm is the craziest part.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I don't know if they put information about like they put your names and things, and so through that, this guy, this Good Samaritan was able to track me down, and he messaged me on Facebook, and we got to kind of hear from him, like,
Mm.
and it's just it really makes you think there has to be some sort of higher power, because that that airport, it's in Henderson, there's not a lot of stuff around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, there's this like weird like desert scape and rocks and things around. And this guy just happened to be driving through, and he had his two sons in the car with him. And one of his sons, I believe, it was either his son or like his brother's son, like his nephew, had sustained burns from a previous injury and
Oh,
had
really?
spent time at the burn center.
Wow, how did I not know this? Or maybe I forgot it.
Yeah. And so he was driving by and he saw the fire, and he kind of just thought maybe it's like a brush fire or something. And his son was like, no, daddy, there's a man. Like, we have to go help him.
Wow.
And yeah, so he pulled over the car, and he was the one shouting at you, like, he's like, stop, drop, and roll. He was like, I could see him sprinting, and he was on fire.
Wow.
And
It's crazy. I feel like I've never heard it this way, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then he also, mentioned to us there were others that he helped. I think he pulled like 2 people away from the plane. I
Yeah.
don't know all the specifics about that, but uh, yeah, I think just meeting him, and it was pretty crazy. And then he mentioned that the plane kind of like, I don't want to say exploded, but kind of there was a little mini.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I remember someone saying like it's gonna explode, it's gonna explode. And then I had this conscious thought in between like just pure terror and like the pain started setting in and then the fear and between all that, I had this one conscious thought was like, how does he know it's gonna explode? And then sure enough, yeah, I remember seeing it go like a kind of big pop.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, it just, yeah, it all felt so surreal.
Yeah. So, that happens.
Mm.
The firefighter, EMTs, fire department comes out. What do you remember about, your ride over to the hospital?
Yeah, again, it was like I couldn't move. Uh, they load me up on a gurney. I got thrown in the ambulance, and the guy, I was asking for payment because now all of a sudden the pain's coming in, and for some reason I specifically feel like remember it in my legs. I was wearing shorts that day, and we still have all the my uniform that I was wearing that was all
Yeah.
burned, and shout out to Adidas for saving my feet.
No,
My
really.
my Adidas NMD, like one of the only parts that's not burned on me is my feet. So that's pretty great. Thanks,
Shout out
Adidas.
Adidas.
Yeah, yeah. Looking for a sponsor. No, but he's in there and he's just trying to talk to me and keep me calm. And he's saying certain things that he's got to do. I was like, hey, can I get pain medicine? He's like, no, you can't pay medicine. I'm like, sweet.
Great.
Yeah. I'm like, awesome. I remember we were on this like really rough road.
Bumpy.
So bumpy. It felt like there was potholes everywhere, or we were like off-roading or something, which is probably what you want to do when you want to get somebody to the hospital ASAP. And yeah, I was like, God, what did he do? Did he take the roughest road, like the bumpiest road in all of Nevada or something? And I don't know. In between, again, like crying and like freaking out, I start kind of maybe making jokes.
Yeah, you were cracking a ton of jokes. And
Yeah.
I remember, so the firefighter paramedic that was with you, his name was Chase.
Mhm.
And he was just so like blown away by you, and he just felt like so connected to you. And he, came and like asked the hospital, like, is it okay if I just like know how he's doing, or can I like meet his family? I just really want to tell them how he was on that ride over, because at, that point in time, it was maybe a week or two after, and we didn't have any of that information. And it brought us so much comfort to hear from him, like that you were
Oh,
just
wow.
like your same self on that ride over. I think he asked you like, he was like, hey, I need to cut your shorts off. Is that okay? And you
It's
were like,
probably my favorite
you were like,
joke.
yeah, that's fine. Just, you're not going to find anything too impressive under there.
Yeah, yeah. And he was like, I remember him laughing too.
Yeah.
And,
And I
he
think the
actually,
other thing too you said was like, you're like, be honest with me, man. Do I still have eyebrows? And he was like, nah.
oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't remember
And
that
you were
one.
like, damn it.
Oh, shoot. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why. You never know how you're going to be in these dire situations, right?
Yeah.
And I think we'll see it throughout my recovery when I wasn't at my lowest mood, where when I was my most depressed and when I was my most sad,
Yeah.
that I used through my recovery a lot of humor.
A ton of humor.
Yeah, to get it through. So yeah, I mean, it was, I think, a part of my healing process, and it's one thing that helped me stay in the right mood. But yeah, the last thing I remember at that point was getting wheeled into the ER, and I reached into my pocket and said, "Hey, this is my passcode. Type it. Go into my favorites. Call my dad."
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's kind of the last thing I really consciously remember till a month and a half later.
Yeah. So I was going to ask about that next, in terms of what you remember the next point from getting to the hospital,
Mhm.
that moment of waking up, was there kind of like an oh shit moment of like where you realized the extent of your injuries, or did you not really even still realize it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and I talked about this with John on that episode as well. There was these dreams I was having, and it's so trippy because they do just feel so real.
Right.
And it's, the weirdest thing. Like I had dreams of being on a conveyor belt and, almost like I was a fish about to get packaged for the supermarket, and getting like picked apart. And these people are like working on me on an assembly line. And, in all of my dreams, I was almost like, I was paralyzed.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I probably was and strapped down in real life. But, all these things. And there's this moment too. I think I also talked about this with John, where it's like I just felt like I was going to die. And I was at that moment where I had to just accept death. And I think that to this day is one of those things that has always stuck with me. I think it will maybe always stick with me. It's one of this dream. Like I don't remember everything in detail, but there's a lot of moments in this dream that I do remember, but it's majority the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
This feeling of like, oh, okay, this is what dying feels like.
Yeah.
So there's that. But when I wake up, I remember the first time it like hit me that I had lost a bunch of time
Mm-hmm.
and that what had happened to me was real. There was a nurse that came in, they always tell you, they write the date and, all the people who are going to be working on you throughout the day. And I couldn't see too, right? Because I've worn contacts my whole life and I wear glasses and I couldn't see anything. So for months and months and months, everything was blurry. So I couldn't tell what date it was. But she was like, hey, do you know what day is it? It
Mm-hmm.
is. And I knew some time had passed, like a week or a couple weeks. I was like, I don't know, September something. And she was like, no, it's like October 15th, and I was like, October? Like what? And like what
Yeah.
happened, right? And that idea of, oh my gosh, you've lost so much time. And then I think at that moment too, the pain starts flooding in. And I was like, oh shit, this is bad. Like you're messed up
Yeah.
because there was just so much pain everywhere.
Yeah. And it's crazy when you say too, like some of the dreams that you were having. I remember you talking about that with me, and just like the whole assembly line idea. If I think about it now, having all those people kind of working on you at different points, that was probably when you're getting like all your dressings changed and they're,
Yeah.
peeling off like the bandages and having to like rewrap you every single day. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that was really rough. I remember I hated that. They obviously wouldn't let us stay for those. And
Right.
yeah, I just remember how much you would dread it every time that would come.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was not enough pain medicine in the world to not feel pain in those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. As you can't do anything. It has to happen. And I just remember just shaking.
Also, because you don't have like skin covering your body. So you're like, I remember they would
Yeah.
keep your room at like, like 90 degrees or something crazy like that. Like I'd be sweating my
Mm.
ass off in there.
Oh
But
yeah.
they kept your room so warm. But still, if you don't have skin covering your body, you don't have anything to like insulate you, keep you protected. And
Totally.
you were still doing a lot of surgeries, skin grafts, and
Mm-hmm.
you had major parts of your body that you needed to cover because the extent of your burns, I guess. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, one of the first times I remember like being able to see what had happened and like the state my body was in was a dressing change. And I remember them peeling off, cutting down or taking off all the dressings, and then there was that yellow stuff on it. They were peeling it off, and like even though your skin's healing, like skin is still coming with it. Sorry, graphic, it's kind of
Trigger
gross.
warning.
Trigger warning, yeah. But then it was just blood, and I just remember blood just everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck? Like, I was
Like,
like,
what happened?
yeah. Or just like, I don't have like skin.
Yeah.
There's so many moments throughout this process that you have an out of body experience where you're like, is this real? Like, is this my body? Is this what it looks like now? And I hadn't seen my face yet. And that's like a whole different thing.
Right.
But yeah, there was just so many open areas. Like obviously like from my ankles to my thighs are burned. Luckily, like, the baby maker is still all untouched and everything. So that's good. But, and then, but there was parts of my stomach and my chest that they had to take skin from to, I guess, graft over and stuff. But
Yeah.
remember my arms being completely just burned and damaged. And then my hands, I didn't know what my hands looked like for so long
Yeah.
because they were in these big, almost cast-like bandages,
Hmm.
and I could feel all my fingers.
Yeah.
But so I was like, oh, my hands are probably
I'm
rough.
good to go.
Yeah. I was like, they're probably pretty beat up, but like I still got my hands.
Right.
And then when they took off the bandages, I remember like not thinking about, oh my gosh, like thinking about like you lost something, but also thinking like, whoa, this is so weird.
Right.
And like my hands just look so different.
Totally.
I had 31 years of like having these hands, and then all of a sudden it was like they're just gone. Like
Yeah.
there's just things missing now.
I remember that was like a big thing was your hand surgery that you got, because they brought in this specialty plastics doctor that specialized in like hand surgery specifically, like for plastic surgery, hand surgery.
Was this in Vegas?
That was in Vegas.
Oh wow, okay.
And I remember one of her, like, I don't know what they call them, like the fellows or something, like basically a doctor that worked underneath her.
Yeah,
Had
little
kind
doctor.
Yeah, mini doctor. Um, she had a conversation with me and she was very blunt in a way that was not to my liking. And I remember crying about it, as I did many things at that time.
Yeah, which was to
And
be fair.
she told me, she was like, look, it's not a matter of if he's going to need amputations, it's a matter of how much we're going to need to amputate.
Oh man.
And as brutal as it was to hear that, I went into your hand surgery with that mindset. Whereas I think your parents talked to the head surgeon and she was like, I'm going to do like she was very positive, right? But she was like, I'm going to do everything I can to like save as much, of his hands as I can. And kind of saying the same thing, just in a nicer way. But I think, your parents are very positive people. I'm like definitely generally lean more pessimistic. So like, I think in that situation, it kind of helped me weirdly. But like, I think your mom just kept saying like, no, like, I know they're going to save his hands. Like his fingers are going to be fine. It's going to be all good. And so after your surgery, I remember the surgeon was like, oh, can I speak with the three of you, like me and your mom and your dad? And we like went in this like weird hospital conference room and she was like listing off like, okay, like we took this finger, this finger, this finger, this finger. And I just remember like, I will never forget the look like on your parents' faces because I felt like they just felt so like devastated for you. And I feel like they maybe weren't, I don't know if they were prepared for that because I think they were coming at it so positively and had this great conversation and they thought it wasn't going to go like that.
Right.
And they're upset, understandably. But I think also the main concern was like, how is he going to feel about this? Like, is he going to freak out? Is he going to trip out? And that was like kind of a big thing with your family was like, we can't let him see his hands because he's going to get freaked out. Like, what is he going to do? Like, is that going to cause him emotional devastation? Because I think understandably you had some good days and you had some really, really hard days.
Yeah. It didn't hit me like that didn't feel like the biggest issue those first couple months in the hospital because I was like, I didn't have to use my hands at that point. Like I couldn't, right? I mean, there was just couldn't do anything. They wouldn't let me eat. They wouldn't let me drink. They had the trach and there wasn't like any use or need to use my hands in those moments. So I didn't really think about it. I feel like where it got hard with my hands was maybe the second time I went to the rehab facility at Sharp. And then started going through occupational therapy. But yeah, at that moment, there was just, everything was just so sore. That's all I could think about. And it was so much pain, where I definitely had the thought of like, I don't want to do this. Like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then you're on your back so long and you saw the pressure wound that started developing. Then that started hurting so bad. And then the fractures in my back weren't like healed yet. So that hurt. So there were just so many things. Like I couldn't think about how am I going to use my hands? I was like, I don't think I can make it through this pain.
It wasn't even like on your radar at that point. You had so much
Yeah.
other stuff that you're
Yeah.
dealing with.
If it was on the radar, it was like the outer rings.
Right.
Like the inner rings were like pain. Just like stop thinking about how much pain you're in.
Yeah.
Right. And then that was the thing that really was all consuming. And then the loss, like what did I lose? Right. I mean, I just felt like I had lost everything, and I was simultaneously thinking about how I have nothing and then being surprised by who was at the hospital.
That was another thing I really wanted to talk about because I feel like, obviously you and I and like you and your family members, like we all shared a lot of really like intimate and sometimes really difficult moments
Yeah.
with you.
Mhm.
And I guess I just want to know if there were any that stood out to you, like with me or your family, or I feel like you had so many just, I don't want to say random, but there were a ton of friends that came through. And it's sometimes were people that you just hadn't even like seen or heard from in so long. And I think it really shocked you. Like, oh my gosh, like all these people showed up for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was simultaneously like amazing and awesome, and also was really hard because it was also a sign of how bad I was,
Mm.
where I'm like, these people wouldn't show up unless it was something.
Unless I'm dying.
Right, right. So it was weird because it was like semi supportive, which felt nice, while also feeling like, oh God, maybe you are dying.
Yeah.
So it kind of became this thing of like, wow, that's really nice, but also like, yeah, dude, you're dying.
Right. Like I'm not
So
making it out of this.
right, and
Yeah.
that's what's weird about it. It's nice and it is comforting in some ways, but in other ways, it's this sign that maybe you are just as bad as your mind is perceiving you to be. And it was so hard to tell. Like everybody was being so nice and you were being so nice. We'll get into you because I think that was a different thing between, like, selfishly, maybe I kind of expected my parents to be there. I was kind of even surprised about my sister, but there were certain family members I was like, oh yeah, of course you're here.
Of
You
course you'll
know,
show up, Grandpa.
I don't remember seeing grandpa at all or grandma, but yeah, I just kind of remember thinking like, of course my parents would be here. But for you, I was always surprised. Like it became something of, wow, I really just hope she shows up today. And we had I don't remember if this was in Vegas or if this was in UCSD. But in Vegas, I remember having this thought of like, yeah, one day you're just not going to be there anymore, and every day you would show up, it'd be such a surprise to me, and I just didn't expect it. I was like, man, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be living through this. Like, she has no reason to be sticking around. And that, it was always a surprise when I got to see you like every day.
I don't know why you're surprised. I love you a whole lot.
I know.
And
Yeah.
I did then as well. And I think to me, it was like, it was never a thought of like, if I'm going to be there, if I'm going to stay. It was just, how am I going to make it work? Like, how am I going to like support myself? And I was, so lucky that like I got to just, essentially me and your mom were just roommates the whole time. We got to, somebody from Hawaii, as Hawaii people do, helped us get a place to stay and some accommodations. And we were so lucky for that.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean it was easy either, right? Like
It
it
wasn't. It
was,
wasn't.
yeah, this is under very
I
difficult.
think, it was like a conscious thing every day where I was like, okay, I'm getting up, I'm getting over there because I know he's probably going to be awake and I want to be there. But I think like the biggest challenge was like not even like getting over there, not even driving there. It just was like when I come to the doors of the burn center and like have to like pick up the phone to be let in,
Mhm.
just like crossing over that threshold every day, just being like, I don't know what today holds. And for me, it wasn't me or like my own well-being I'm concerned about. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen to him today. What are they
Yeah.
going to do to him today? What is he going to be feeling today? Every day was
Mm-hmm.
so different.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the hardest thing, and I don't think I've ever been that great of a sleeper, but I just could not sleep. I mean, the entire time I was in the hospital, I really couldn't
Yeah.
sleep. But I would be lucky if I got like 1 hour of sleep in Vegas,
Right.
I mean, that would like making it through the night was the biggest achievement. Like that's, where this whole idea of 1% better came from in a
Yeah.
sense, because in the bandages, I would be holding up the one finger I thought was still there, but I'd be holding up one finger for my mom be like, and I would remember like gruffing out, like, I made it one more night.
Yeah.
Like I made it one more night. Cause I was I didn't think I could.
Yeah.
I just didn't think I could make it one more night. And it was all the thoughts, and it was, I couldn't really see anything, but like I could kind of make out the hands of the clock ticking down. And I was like, I got to make it one more hour, one more minute, one more anything. Right. And yeah. And so that was such a difficult thing. But yeah, when I would see you, it was all of a sudden this injection of light and like, oh, okay. Like she's still here.
No. Well, I just remember seeing your face when I would come in the morning, and I felt like even if you were just having a rough morning or something, you always greeted me with a smile. And it was kind of funny because you were missing a tooth, but it was still really cute.
Uh,
But
that's,
anyways,
that's real love right there. Yeah. When you
yeah,
got
I
the
kind
hockey
of
smile.
I kind of want to move this along because I feel like there's so much more I want to discuss just about the rest of your journey and really the recovery process, because that time in the hospital was, it was grueling, and we just so badly wanted, I don't know, it felt like at one point your recovery was, I don't want to say like stagnant, but it kind of felt that way from where I was sitting. And so we just wanted to get you to the next place.
Yeah.
So from, the hospital in Vegas, the next is like transfer you. I don't know if you want to speak to your bit bopping around transfer journey.
That day, yeah, I don't know if this is like even like legally maybe allowed to say on the conditions and everything, but somehow you guys figured it out, and that I was going to get transferred back here to San Diego. And I was so excited about that. But that day was so rough. I remember the night before, like a couple of nurses were just kind of hanging out in the room and talking to somebody. And it was like the closest I'd gotten to anybody in there. I really don't have too many fond memories of being in that first hospital. It was miserable all around. I felt like I was getting treated miserably too. But I got up, whatever it was, like 3, 4 in the morning, and they're like, all right, we're going to wheel you out of here, put you on a gurney. I don't remember even getting to the airport, but they put me back in an ambulance, I believe.
Yeah.
Brought me to the airport, wheeled me onto like the tarmac, and then pushed me on this conveyor belt basically into this.
It's like your nightmare.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, being back in a plane, but I just told myself like somehow at this point I had already accepted like, you're already going to die. So who cares if you're going to die here?
Did you feel any sort of way about getting on a plane?
Yeah, but I think that's the thing. It's like in my head, there was still this feeling of like, you already died. So if you die again, who cares? Yeah. So I get wheeled on, they strap me down, and like, I don't know if I got some type of lorazepam or like something to like calm me. Yeah, to calm me down. But I was able to kind of nap, honestly, like randomly fell asleep. They wheel me out, get put on another ambulance. We go to Sharp rehab facility. And then the thing I remember about that, so I have no pain medicine in this time. I'm still in the most excruciating, unimaginable pain. Every part of me just feels like your body is on fire, and, there's still blood everywhere.
You still had open wounds on you.
Right. And then so we get wheeled into Sharp, and they're like, oh, you're not nearly close enough to be here.
They're like, why are you here? I don't think they were trying to be like rude or anything.
Yeah.
I really don't. But I do think that they were really shocked to kind of see you being brought in.
Right.
They're like, wow, that we're not equipped to handle this. And maybe like could have been some better bedside manner. And maybe it was just the nurse that we had. But
Right.
I think, yeah, they were not at all prepared for the state that you were coming in.
Right. And I think that's totally fair. But yeah, that night, right, they figure out like, no, you need to go back into the hospital, like the ICU now.
The burn center, yeah.
Yeah, the burn center. And so they figured it out. But then at this point, it'd been probably 8 hours of not having pain medicine. And I just remember feeling like everything, all the pain starts setting in. And in my head, I'm like, I want to die. I want to die. I want to die. This like feels so miserable. They eventually get me back into another ambulance. We get to UCSD and I get put in that ICU and then get some pain medicine and things kind of start settling in. But I had just, it was so uncomfortable. And then it was so foreign. It was so weird. And, there was different systems in there. And the way that their nurses did it was different than the last hospital I was at, for better or worse. I just didn't understand. And it was a shock all over again, in a sense.
It was an insane day, and I do remember the nurses saying, like, "Why do you have this kind of bandaging?" Or like, "Why do you have this
Right.
on you?" Like, "That's not what we do." And like
Yeah. Why do you have this
everyone
like fluid on you? What's this purple stuff? And I'm like, I
right.
don't
Like
know.
hell if I know.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that was a kind of crazy day, and maybe as discombobulated as you felt and as rough as you felt with like the pain medicine and stuff or lack thereof.
Yeah.
I do think, and you can elaborate on this, that when you got to UCSD, the burn center there is really where there was like a shift in the trajectory of your recovery.
Yes. Yeah. In a lot of ways, even though the first hospital, saved my life,
Hmm.
I really feel like I started healing in UCSD.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like it was just such a shift from bedside manner and the nurses that I got to the doctors, even though I had some doctors that were very blunt too. It always felt like I was with the best of the best. I
Right.
was with professionals. And there was still rough and some funny moments that came out of that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about your ground beef story.
oh shoot, is the ground beef story the same one where I was getting bandage changes
I
and
think
all the
so.
doctors came in? Okay. Yeah. Probably one of my lowest moments, and something, where if you want to embody what this podcast is all about, right? The bright side of the darkest moments. This is probably one of my lowest moments that I can remember in the hospital. And now I think it's pretty funny. But I'm getting bandage changes. Again, I've already explained how much I dreaded it, but like there was all these nurses working on me, and at some point they had to like lift me up to, I don't know, like work on the backside of me or something. So I'm completely naked. There's two people on both sides of me lifting me up, and there's one person just changing bandages.
Yeah.
And then the head doctor comes in, and she's with the fellows, or like a posse, a gaggle of little doctors,
If you will.
if you will. Yeah. There's like all these little doctors around, and she's looking, and they're kind of chit chatting and this and that. She's like, so, yeah, you're going to have to, I don't know what I was thinking, but I wasn't expecting this. And she says, you're going to need a lot more surgeries. And yeah, your neck looks like ground beef or whatever. And I'm like, what? And they're holding me up, and I just start bawling, like breaking down, like getting held up, like,
And you're just butt naked.
stripped down.
A
all
room
these
full of people just staring at your junk.
Exactly. There's like 10 people in that room getting held up, and I'm just destroyed bawling.
Aw.
And it was just the lowest moment that I can remember. And
Yeah.
later on, even one of the nurses, I had grown so much and changed so much that we were able to laugh at it.
Right.
But and obviously I'm able to laugh at it now, but God, did I just feel lowest of low.
Yeah.
Like I'd never felt like more helpless and more hopeless in my whole life.
Yeah. And I remember that doctor, and she made me cry a couple times, but she's just very blunt. She's very smart. She's very capable. She knows
Yeah.
what she's doing, but
Mhm.
yeah, she'll make you cry.
Totally. It's funny though, because yeah, I just kind of always, it never really bothered me. And like, I could see why it bothered you, but
Yeah.
after that moment, I was like, this is the way she is. And she's just going to deliver the information, whatever it is, she's just going to give it
She's
to
not
me
giving
straight.
you a pretty package. She's just giving you the quick and dirty.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a blunt way of saying that to a rough way, maybe, but like, yeah, totally. And yeah, I really just credited them. And it wasn't easier in a lot of ways. It was actually harder in a lot of ways because I was more conscious, because I was able to kind of understand what they were doing and what they had planned to do. And also just being more conscious of the fact that like I was always in pain, and that what I needed to do to get through this would involve these moments of increased pain,
Right.
which were bandage changes, which were surgery. Oh, there's one moment though that was kind of a highlight, and I want to go back to like the original hospital real quick. One of the highlights though, and this moment also just completely like broke me down, but it was such like amazing moment because they don't let you have any water. They don't let you have any food. I remember begging for like ice chips and they're like, we can't give you any liquid.
Mm-hmm.
So like the only relief I would have is like teeth brushes. And it was like
Right.
the worst mouthwash. It just tasted nasty.
I
Like,
remember it was just like a paste. Like we weren't even allowed to put like water with the paste. It was just
yeah,
like, you can just like swab this little thing in there and then that's it.
totally. Right. And
Me
just
and
like,
your mom would like sneak little sips of water here and there when
oh,
we
really?
could.
I don't remember. Oh, I don't remember that at all.
Barely. It's like we would dip something in water and just like put it on your tongue. So
Yeah, I know. I remember kind of getting mad at my dad because like, give me like a ice chip or something. He's like,
yeah.
I can't. And I'm just like, ah.
Yeah, we really weren't supposed to. And when you have the trachea thing in, like that's dangerous. So
Yeah, but it was just like the sensation of not having something in your mouth that would like quench it or
right.
whatever, just having like cotton mouth for months and months and months. Yeah, so eventually we got to do this thing called the swallow test after they pulled out the trach. And I remember, everything's dyed green or like painted green so they could see it with cameras or whatever they use. And that moment where I got to like eat something and was able to swallow. And like they would give me something where I had to practice, right?
Yeah.
Like they were like, practice this with your muscles that you can do it. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I'm passing. And when, I was able to swallow that stuff and they said, hey, good news is you get to eat now. I remember just crying,
Yeah, that
like
was really
breaking down.
emotional for you. I remember asking you probably in October. I was like, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I think you said, "All I want is grape juice."
Grape juice.
And I
Yeah.
was like, "That's sad, but okay, I can do that."
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
but I think that's one of those things, when I think about like the milestones that you had when you were in the hospital and like for me it was like, "Oh my gosh, like they sat him up, he was able to sit up," or
Yeah.
you had people like propping you up and like walking and you're all, in
Hmm.
your robes and things and kind of all bloodied and it didn't look like you're having a good time, but you were
Yeah.
doing it and that was the important part. And to me, those things were milestones, but I feel like for you, it was almost like a bigger deal that you were able to like do the swallow test past that and you could actually eat.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was probably one of the only things that felt like a milestone in the first hospital.
Yeah.
Everything else, I was like, what the heck happened? I've always been so athletic and independent and capable. And then to have huge guys like lift you out of bed to take a step,
Yeah.
I just felt like I was so incapable and I felt like I lost so much. And, I don't know. I think maybe for most guys, maybe I'll just speak for myself, but just the idea of not being useful was
Mm.
such a huge fear of mine. And then, to need to help to walk was like, oh my gosh, you can't do anything for yourself. And that was such a blow. But yeah, I mean, things that happened in the hospital, like nothing felt like a big milestone for me. It does now.
Sure.
Only in retrospect do these things feel like milestones.
Right. Maybe it's kind of hard to appreciate in the moment just because of how much pain you're in and how much other, things that you're thinking of. But yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about your kind of the different therapies that you underwent,
Hmm.
in the hospital and rehab, even once you were discharged from rehab and, you did occupational therapy, physical therapy, and then psychological, talk therapy. I think those were probably the biggest three. But yeah, can you like talk us through your
Yeah.
experience with those?
Definitely. So I think physical therapy, funny enough, seemed like the easiest thing because once I started being able to move, like once the pain wasn't the focus and it was on, hey, do these exercises. Like even before my accident, like I was still going to the gym like 3 days a week and
Yeah.
being physical and active has been a part of my life, my whole life, really. I've always done some kind of sport. And then my mom got me a gym membership when I was a freshman in high school. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. And I loved it. I really leaned into that. So once I got to physical therapy, it just felt like exercising again. So that wasn't the problem. It only became challenging when COVID happened
Right.
because I got out of the hospital and it was kind of like COVID started. And then that was the hard part, which, for me, I kind of looked at it the way I looked at college, which was I'm not the smartest, I'm not the best student, I don't know how I'm going to do college, but I told myself back then, just show up. Like if you show up, you'll learn something and you'll probably be able to pass the test. And so every day for school, I would just show up, right? And I would take notes. I never studied really. I didn't really review the notes, but I was in class.
Yeah.
And it's kind of how I got through college,
I
just
can't
by,
relate.
yeah, I know.
So
Because
can't
you're a
relate.
good
It's giving
student.
me anxiety just to hear that you went through life like that.
But I graduated, and that's kind of how I felt about physical therapy. It's like
Right.
as long as I show up, you'll progress. So physical therapy wasn't the hardest thing. Again, it was just kind of like managing my pain. And then occupational therapy, I think for me, this is where the frustration came in. It started going from despair and loss to anger
Mhm.
about what I lost, because that's where they start making you do things with your hands.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, I can't do anything. Like, I can't tie my shoes. I can't feed myself that well. Like, I'm never going to be able to use chopsticks again. And being from Hawaii, like, it was a point of pride for me
Yeah.
using chopsticks. I remember being on a trip with my dad and like showing these people from Canada how to use them, and like, wow, this is great. And, I wasn't a great guitar player, but I play guitar every once in a while. And it was like, damn, I'm never going to play guitar again.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff, yeah, it turned into anger, but it was really about like engaging what was left. And your hands, I don't know if it was the way I was grafted, but also how the amputations went. They just were so sensitive. Like everything felt
Yeah.
like pins and needles, like everything did.
Yeah.
And that was such a weird thing to kind of adapt to.
Yeah. The occupational therapy, I remember being difficult for you because they're having you do these really fine, like motor skill things with your hands, like trying to pick up really small things. And I
Yeah,
just
like these
remember
sticks.
that was so frustrating for you. It was
Mhm.
really, it was hard for me to like watch you do that because I'm like, it's something that you take so for granted of like, oh yeah, I can just like pick this up super easy. Or like even the other day, when we were at your prosthetic appointment and I'm like holding my coffee mug and it's like set kind of there and I'm using my pinky as like a rest and you're like,
Yeah.
I want to be able to do that. And I'm like, it still surprises me that I'm like, I don't even, it's something that you don't think about when you have the full capabilities.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just even the way my fingers are amputated, right? Like I'm like the old AT&T logo, right? Like
Raising the bar, or what is that?
yeah. So that's weird though. Like to lose that distance on your pinky, it changes things, right? I lost both my pointer fingers, so you do so much. Like think about how you pinch things and hold things, right? Like to
Yeah.
lose that, now my middle fingers have become my pointer fingers, and that was such a weird change. And also, like I'm right-handed.
Yeah.
So like I lost way more on my right side than my left side. So I do so much more on my left. And even that was such a big transition because now I'm forced to do all these fine motor skills more with my left side.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just so frustrating and it made me so mad. And it was a tough process on that side. It's like I'm still not out of the pain side of things,
Yeah.
but I'm also still not, I'm gaining more independence because I have to. And it's like nothing works the way it used to work.
Right.
But I will say I give credit to a lot of the occupational therapists I had at UCSD and even at Sharp. I mean, the Sharp guys like trying to figure out how to get me back into like moving and just using my body again. And they found different things, whether it was cooking that got me out of it, or golf with John.
Yeah.
Setting up golf clubs so that I could just at least swing a club.
Yeah, they had all kinds of crazy setups with the different grips and they were so
Yeah.
great with that,
They were
you know.
so awesome. Yeah. But
Yeah.
that was a weird thing. It was, and then just, I can't explain enough for years. Also, my fingers were broken on this side, right?
Yeah,
That
you
was
had the
another,
broken pinky.
yeah, my pinky was broken, stuck basically 90 degrees. And then this finger, my middle finger, was basically bent 90 degrees too. So I had to go through, it was like a year of having these broken fingers
Right.
in this really weird position. So that was like another thing that made it more challenging. So after they got fixed, then it was deepening web spaces, which I had to go through. That was probably one of the most brutal surgeries.
Yeah.
Was them cutting into the hands because of how they were grafted. They were like cinched up like a duck's foot. They were like all webbed. So I couldn't really even space them out. So cutting into my hands to give them more space to move my fingers was such a weird thing. But that surgery was absolutely brutal.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you too, just briefly about obviously you had, I don't even know how to count how many surgeries at this point, like
Yeah.
60, maybe something.
Yeah, I mean, definitely over 50 if I count, like, I was talking to John Pendleton also about this, and I was like, do you count the lasers as like surgery procedures?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, definitely. He's like, if you've never gotten that, it's brutal.
Yeah. It's like the
And
CO2 laser, right?
yeah, and
Oof,
think about, I
brutal.
mean, I've had like 20 sessions with the CO2
At
laser.
least. Yeah.
Yeah, which is basically they shoot this square grid and it's mini burns. So
Hmm.
they do these mini burns to basically create space, and then your blood basically sends like white blood cells in there, and then it kind of creates this reinforcement, gives you space, loosens up your scars, all that. Because the
Right.
other thing about having that many burns is like if you burned a plastic bag, it cinches up, it contracts.
Right.
Right, your skin does that too, right? So loosening all that up. And so, yeah, now I think it's been about 50 something. I lost count after 50,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But
it's been 50 something surgeries,
so
procedures.
of all the surgeries you had, you mentioned the hand one was particularly rough, but
Hmm.
is there one that sticks out to you the most, or that was like the
Yeah.
most traumatic for you?
Yeah, definitely. The three I think that were the hardest were the hands, which they had to separate because I needed one hand to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
And then my eyelids, because I lost my eyelids. So that surgery was tough because they basically sew these like bandages on the new eyelids that they put in there,
Right.
and you can barely see out of it. And yeah, having these things kind of stapled to your eyes for weeks.
I remember that. It was like almost like sewn into your eyes, like these
Yeah.
little puffy bandages.
Yeah, that was a very tough one. The ear, just because, I obviously lost this ear, and through COVID, everybody's wearing masks, right? But like,
Yeah.
it was a hard thing for me to do too because
Yeah, we were trying to like rig up. We had to get the mask that like tied behind your head or like try and
right.
tie it to your glasses or something.
Yeah, and I remember somebody being like, "Oh, why don't you wear your mask?" And I was like, "I can't." And I showed them my ear, and they're like, "Oops, sorry." And I'm like,
Whoops.
"Yeah, like I would wear one."
Yeah, jackass. Like,
Kind of, yeah, you get to flex a little bit. And I probably did at that time because I was just so mad.
still do.
But the ear was tough because basically for both my ears, I lost the top part of this one and I lost almost completely the right side of my ear. So they took out the bottom floating ribs. So not only is your head sore, and if you ever like hurt or pierce your ear, you know how sensitive it is.
Yeah.
So that skin is extra sensitive. And also they had to like pull skin from like my head to like wrap an ear that wasn't there. So you have these two ribs that are missing now. And that was intense and sore. But then also like the ear itself, now you have like this extra sensitive part. So I think that one was really, really particularly tough and sore.
Yeah.
And then sleeping with these huge bandages and like a drain, that was really crazy. And then the last one was the last surgery I probably had, which was,
Oh,
how I was burned. They didn't have any, like, I didn't have a hairline, and they had a graft here, and I was never getting back any hair on this side of my head. So you can't get like normal plugs as a burn survivor, as you know, but you don't have any healthy skin,
right.
is what they call it, right? And so basically, they had to put an implant in my head that's like in the shape of a hairline. And every week I had to go in and get like 10 cc's of saline to basically expand it, expand, expand.
Right. Because the idea is that they fill this pouch thing in your
Yeah.
head
Hmm.
and that stretches the skin so that they can, once they take the pouch out, there's some extra stretchy skin and they can pull your hairline down to like a more, normal symmetrical hairline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was just tough. Those months of having that thing in my head and just getting it filled up, and then just feeling like a freak that you have this giant bump on your head, and you can't hide it under a hat. You can't,
Yeah.
it just, I think mentally
That was
that
really
that
tough.
was tough. And then every Friday when they would fill it up, you get these like enormous migraines. And I wanted to get to the surgery part as fast as
Yeah.
possible. And I think the most they could do was like almost 15. But at 15, I remember like there was days where I had this like massive headache because it's that implant is also pushing on your skull.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those three were the toughest by
Yeah.
far.
And I
Yeah.
feel like that's kind of a good segue just back into the whole, psychological aspect of it because I do remember when you did that surgery just recently, I felt like that was a really tough time for you mentally.
Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't know what to say to you or how to comfort you. And I feel like you were still doing your normal therapy sessions. And I just felt like you were the one having to like live with this thing on your head, and it was so uncomfortable and you didn't feel good about yourself. And I guess, that really ties into the question of like, how did psychological, talk therapy, how has that helped you like through your whole recovery process?
Yeah, it's changed my whole life. I was never one of those people that was like, therapy's for weak people, or guys don't need it. But I did think I was one of those people that probably didn't need it for themselves
Right.
my whole life. I was like, man, if I'm sad or depressed or whatever, one, I didn't really even know what depression was. I didn't realize it at the time. And two, I was like, oh, I can go work out. Oh, I'll have a fun weekend. We were living in Marina Del Rey, and then we go like, we're going to go to the beach and go to the bars and
Cruise on
just
the
cruise
bikes.
on the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, life's good, and it would reset me. But when you don't have those opportunities to run from your problems, or run from the bad thoughts, or run from the traumatic moments that happen in your life that define you, but you get to ignore because you have work, or you get these other things that distract you from
Right.
really looking at yourself in the mirror and who you are, it's really, really hard. At least it was for me. And I never felt like I was a really bad person. There's things I'm not proud of. But when those moments I thought, oh, when I was going to die, I looked back at my life and I was like, you know what? You try to do the best you can, man. You try to work hard. You try to treat people nicely.
Yeah.
You try to be the best person you had. And I kind of accepted that. And then therapy kind of shows you those things that were hard before your accident, why you're taking these hard things as hard as you are now,
Hmm.
and how you have to adjust to it and move forward in life. And it was really tough. I think I went through 3 different therapists before I met the one I'm at now, and he's just been incredible. But one thing he said to me was, after years, and I had moments of crying and just feeling like I lost everything. I lost this job, but a career, an identity, a purpose, limbs, looks, physical ability. Like I just felt like I lost
Yeah.
so much. And one thing he said kind of, after a year or so of just listening and asking questions, he was like, "But what did you gain?" And when he first said it, I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? What did I
Like,
gain? I didn't
yeah.
gain anything from this.
Yeah.
And I think only recently in the years, especially right before I started doing this podcast, I started really thinking about that. And it was such a weird change in my brain that I feel like it's to myself now. I'm living proof that we can change perspective. I'm living proof to myself that you can not say like defeat depression, because I still have days where I'm depressed, or, I have suicidal thoughts, or I have those things that are there.
Yeah.
But I also realize that you can overcome these things,
Yeah.
and that there are tools and methods and ways of thinking that can elevate you past this, and so much. I feel like what I've learned from therapy is that we have these thoughts, and those thoughts then dictate how you feel and think for a long time, maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe years.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is how things work, because this is how my brain is saying this is good, this is bad. But when you have to look at that and then change how you look at it, you start realizing that maybe those are just thoughts.
Hmm.
Maybe those are just feelings. And it is a very challenging and yet liberating thing that therapy kind of unlocked in me, that
Yeah.
I also feel like can happen to other people.
Totally. And I think, you kind of touched on an important theme of therapy to me, which is that it's not, linear. It's,
Right.
you're going to have, and I've seen it both with myself and with your recovery, you're going to have these moments where you're feeling like you're on this upward trajectory.
Mhm.
And then for you, I always felt like when you had to get a big surgery, or, especially with the one with your head, like I feel like you took it as like this major step back, and it's hard to not feel that way. And
Mhm.
I remember having those conversations with you when you're telling me like, you know, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I don't want to live anymore. And that was so hard for me to hear,
Mhm.
just as your partner. And like, I think anybody who's experienced that is like, can say, like, why wouldn't they want to be with me still? Like, how could they leave me? Like, and those are like some of the thoughts, but it's not about me. It's about what you're going through. And I just had to, all I could do was just support you. And the only way I knew how was to just keep showing up, keep being there for you. But I think, there's a chance like you might not be sitting in front of me without therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sorry it was hard, but you're right. It wasn't about you, it was like I can't do this. And then I mean, I think one of the reasons why I kept showing up to therapy and kept, trying to figure out a way to move past these thoughts was because of you, because like you care about me and I in some ways like still feel like you need me and you need
Of
me
course I do.
around.
Yeah.
And that was like
Can't
a
take care of the dogs by myself. That's crazy.
right. But yeah, I think they're total. Yeah, they're a handful. I get
Leia's insane.
it. But yes, you get in these moments of like, I just don't think I can bear this weight anymore.
Yeah.
And I've heard people describe it when they lose a loved one. The pain never gets easier. It always stays just as heavy. You just get better at holding it. And I think as this year has progressed and as we, started, as soon as I announced that 5-year Aliversary video, I kind of put out there and then announced the podcast, for me, so much changed
Yeah.
because it allowed me there. I had discovered all these things through my recovery on how I now looked at life and how I now looked at what recovery means and what it means to live a good life and live a life of purpose and really just kind of one thing that you can't even imagine. I don't know. Again, I'll probably put this on a lot of men, maybe, or just professionals out there, is that you define yourself so much about your title, about your job, about your performance, about the money in your account. But when none of that matters and you don't get to have or claim any of that, who are you?
Right. When everything's stripped away.
Yeah, when everything's stripped away, what are you? Who are you? That's what this whole recovery process was for me. Was like,
Right.
who am I if I'm not running around and being athletic? And who am I if I can't, be a top salesperson or be a marketing professional? Or at this point, for me, be a pilot, which I
Yeah.
changed and put all of my life into this moment. I was like, there was not one doubt in my mind, you're going to be a commercial pilot. You're going to an airlines. Like, there
Yeah.
was not, I knew it. So, who are you when you don't get to claim any of those things? And for me, it really started engaging like, who am I? Am I a good partner? Am I a good brother? Am I a good son? Am I a good friend? Am I a good citizen? Do I want to stand up for others? Do I want to show love everywhere? And it was like, dang, okay. Well, this is just a different element of who I am that I might not have confronted, but once I started having to confront it and realize this is who I am, why shouldn't I share this with other people?
Right. I think it's incredible that you're doing that. And I think,
Yeah.
even
Good.
having this
Thanks.
conversation today, and I think you touched on one thing I kind of wanted to just briefly address. You kind of talked about it a little bit too, I think with Julian, when you're talking about identity and kind of, who you were pre-accident versus like who you are now. And I guess more so just in terms of like physical appearance and your scars. Are you able now to find strength in them a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of want to flip it back to you after and what you think maybe the changes after I answer this, but
Sure.
I'm still working on it, is the answer.
Yeah.
Like, I still look at my scars and I don't love them. I still look at it and I don't think it's a sign of strength.
Yeah.
Still look at them and think these are ugly or man, this is embarrassing. I still am not able to fully walk outside with short sleeve
Yeah.
shirts and but it's the body that I have. It's the machine I have, something about what John said, I think is really motivating me to kind of engage with that. And truthfully, I'll never be as young as I am in this moment. I might never be as good looking, at this moment, which is weird for me to say now. And, it's a sign of really appreciate where you're at for anybody out there.
Yeah.
Appreciate what you can do, what you have, the abilities you have. And I think I'm still working on it, and I don't know when I'll be over it. But it's funny too, like even before my accident, I always felt like there was things to work on. I was like, oh, my nose is a little crooked. Oh, my jaw's a little crooked. Oh, I have this crooked pinky when I broke my finger playing.
You wouldn't even let me hold your hand on that side because you were embarrassed of your broken pinky.
And of a broken pinky, which I got doing something badass playing football. You know what I mean? But it is something I think I'm always going to be working at, but I see in retrospect how much progress I've made. And I think that I'm proud of.
Also just wanted to, I don't think we really talked about it, the first time that you kind of were able to see yourself after your accident. Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, the first time I remember really looking at myself was at UCSD. We went to this room I had not been in, but it had like a full wall mirror with one of those like ballet bars. Or was it like those two bars you see people who have broken their back and they like are learning to walk again?
They're kind of like the parallel bars.
Yeah, the parallel bars. And I'm like kind of walking on that and trying to regain some balance and strength. And I looked in the mirror and I just broke down. Like I had, my ear was gone and I had no eyebrows and my eyelids weren't there yet. And I was like, I'm a monster. Like I could not believe like what I was looking at the mirror, and it was devastating. And I just was like, that thought of like, I can't do this, and it is crazy to think of that moment now, thinking of what I do now in the mirror, which is, I'm really big on kind of like so many people are, but like reading like Stoic philosophy and Marcus Aurelius and his meditations, but to also speak not what you hope to exist into the world, but acting as if it is already happening.
Right.
And so a lot for me in the morning, it's cheesy or whatever, but it is these affirmations of you are doing and you are the person you want to become. Mm-hmm. Like for people, right, who like, I want to be a millionaire. Okay, cool. You can keep saying I want to be a millionaire. You can still say, I hope it happens. I wish it happens. But why don't you just start acting as if you were a millionaire? Or I want to be, the best quarterback in the world. Like, okay, yeah, you can keep saying I wish, I hope, but why don't you just act like you were? And so I think now looking in the mirror, and there's this sense of like, this is, if it's funny, I use this term a lot, but it's the machine. And I really do, after what I've experienced, I know that there is for me a spirit that is inside of this shell, this machine, and this machine is the one I have.
Yeah.
I have to take care of it. I have to work on it. It's a little dinged up and banged up, and it's, it's
the machine has seen some shit.
Shit, right? I could, maybe put a fresh coat of paint and put it through the wash, but like the dents are going to be there.
Yeah.
But it is the machine I have. And this needs to carry me through the next handful of chapters in my life. I have to use it as well as I can. I have to treat it as well as I can. I'm a little bit more lenient because I was very strict on my diet.
Yeah, you're way more snacky now.
Way more.
And I'm loving it.
I'm not loving the gut, but I am also loving that there are elements of my body that maybe I appreciate so much more now that I never could have back then.
Yeah.
And being a part of this community, even though I'm just a partial hand amputee, and even though I'm a burn survivor, I also realize that people have it so much worse. But it's also apparent to me who takes it for granted.
Right.
The people who are complaining about like, this aches and pain. I mean, granted, it's fair. You can have your aches and pains for sure. I'm not trying to take it away from you. But also like, have you also thought of, but as if you thought about like what you're still able to do that maybe somebody down the street from you who hasn't left the house in a month because of their disability or pain or whatever, what they're going through, or people who are literally in the ICU right now. Like, I walked,
fighting for their life.
I walked past somebody in the ICU at UCSD and he was 90% burned. And at the time they had said I was like 72%, but I know what it looks like now to be 90% burned. And even in that moment, with all the pain, with not being able to walk, with not feeling like everything I lost, I still realize what they lost. And I'm like, man, what does life look like being in that situation?
Yeah.
So I think there's this level of appreciation now for what my body can still do.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I think since that moment of like when you first saw yourself and, maybe you were a little bit fearful and you were like, what is my life going to look like now? Is it worth it to live now? Like, I feel like you did
Mm,
have those thoughts. And I feel like you've come so far in, your own self-confidence since then. And I think it's still an ongoing thing. Like you said,
totally.
you still won't even leave the house with me in a t-shirt or, it's always
Hmm.
like, should I wear these shorts? I don't know. And so I think you've come a really long way. And
Mm.
I think that's really impressive.
Yeah,
I'm proud of
thanks.
you.
Ah, thank you. I'm proud of you too for just kind of supporting me on this. But everybody to some degree struggles with confidence, I
Yeah.
think, unless you're a complete narcissist. But I think the thing that I get the most, because I do these events now for some pop culture podcasts in the pop culture space, I show up these events and there's thousands of people, people are like, man, I could never do what you do and put a camera in someone's face, or you speak on camera in front of all these people. And I think for me, what I tell myself now is, you know what it's like to lose everything,
Yeah.
but you also know what it's like to not have done something when you have all the capability and all the looks that you had and the limbs and all the normality you had in yourself and not go for something.
Yeah.
So, what would it be like if I lost even more? Wouldn't I still regret now not being able to go for it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have to go for it. I think I have this compulsion to just do as much as I can while I can, because one day we won't.
Yeah.
We won't be able to. One day we can't. We just physically won't be able to. So I think it's maybe not even real confidence. It's just what I have to do. And the mission is always going to be more important than how I feel about being in this situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you've really been putting yourself out there and it's not always comfortable, but I'm proud of you for just showing up. It's the Teddy Roosevelt quote, you're putting yourself in the arena or whatever it is. So I'm just proud of you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of just have some final questions for you.
Hmm.
This is kind of a two-parter. So, if you could go back now and just talk to yourself like when you were first in the hospital, what would you say to yourself? And then like just out of curiosity, like what would you say to me? Because selfishly I was trying so hard to understand you and you couldn't really communicate. And I just wanted to know like what does he need from me? Like what is he thinking? Like so
Hmm.
yeah, two-parter.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really love sugarcoating it for myself. I just kind of want the information, the good, bad, or the ugly, because I realize that how we feel about it is just that, it's a feeling.
Right.
So I'm gonna tell them it's gonna suck. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna be it is going to be the hardest thing you'll probably ever have to do in your life. But take it one step at a time. Take it one day at a time. Realize and take account of, even in this moment where you want to die, you feel like dying, you are at your most painful, there is still wonderful, beautiful things happening to you. And I know that you can't see it now. I'm not expecting you to, but something good will come of this. And you just gotta just hang in there. Even when you're like, I don't know how this is gonna work out. I don't know how you're gonna make it through this, but you can do it. You are strong enough. One day at a time, 1% better. It's so cheesy. It's such a bumper sticker saying, but it means so much to me.
It does, yeah.
And I believe that.
Yeah.
I think if you have breath in your lungs and your heart's beating and your mind's working, just keep going forward, keep pushing, keep trying to grow, keep trying to evolve. That's one thing that didn't change from me that I thought was going to change from pre-accident Thomas to post-accident Thomas, is that, am I going to want to keep doing life? Because for me, life was growth. Life was be better than yesterday.
Life was always what's next? What's the next step?
Yeah, yeah. Right. I mean, I think that's one thing that's different now, which is like appreciate the moment,
Yeah.
appreciate where you're at now, have gratitude for every situation that you're in, because you know what it's like, and it could possibly be a lot worse.
Yeah.
So that's probably one thing that changed. But I also think that there's nothing wrong, and it's probably very healthy to continuously try to improve and get better, but also accept that if you're not better than the last day, that's okay.
Yeah. And then
And then for you,
second part, what
sorry,
would you say to me?
I would say you're doing an amazing job, and you just
I'm
show
gonna
it.
cry again.
It's okay. It's okay. Go for it. I mean, you're doing perfect. Nobody should be in this position that you're in. I wouldn't wish this upon anybody, and I don't think anybody else would wish this upon you, but you are handling it so damn well. And he's going to be so thankful to you for what you've done. You were going to, man, it's getting to me. You're just doing so great. Just keep showing up the best you can, because you're doing an amazing job.
Yeah. Thanks, babe. Yeah. That's all I tried to do. Just be there and be your voice when you couldn't be. So
Yeah, you did an amazing job.
yeah.
As much as I credit doctors and in various different facets and plastic surgeons and all these people, and even mentally too, psychologists and family, it's, you are probably the single greatest support system and believer in me, and have seen the highest highs, and you've seen my lowest lows, and you're still here and still got my back.
Yeah, always.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for that.
Of course. Wouldn't have it any other way. Just final question for you.
Yeah.
How do you want people to remember your story, like of your accident? What do you want them to take away from it?
That he let this very intense, traumatic, catastrophic accident define him. I don't want to be remembered for the guy who survived a plane crash.
Right.
I want to be remembered for he did this, and he also survived a plane crash.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the goal amongst so many other things for the rest of my life, where yes, that might hook people, but it's not who I am.
Yeah.
It was this thing that happened to me, and I could have let it define me, but I don't. Every single day I'm going to work to make it not define me.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation. I know we talk a lot about your accident. It's come up a few times over the years,
Yeah,
but
a little bit here and
I
there.
just think it's so special that you have, decided to really share your story like this. And I feel honored to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, man. You're such a great host. I think, I probably gotta just leave it up to you now. Like, you take my job. I think you're just doing a better job, but yeah. And you've just been so amazing, not only today, but through everything. And, I also just want to kind of tell people out there, that if you're going through your lowest moment, your toughest time, your plane crash, and even if it's not dramatic and the rest of the world doesn't know, and it's just you at home, sitting in your bathroom in your tub, or looking in the mirror and just like, I don't know how you're going to do this. Like, you can, your thoughts can be important, but you can always stack a more positive and brighter thought on top of that. You don't have to let your feelings dictate you. You don't have to let any of your situations define you in that moment. The world is going to throw these cards at you. They're going to throw these situations at you, and we don't get to choose it.
Yeah.
Right. I felt like I was so absolutely prepared for my flight. I felt like I did everything I could to make it safe, and this thing still happened.
Yeah.
And yes, it did. But it doesn't need to be who you completely are. It is going to be about how you move forward,
How you come back from it.
Yeah, how you come back from it, how you approach the obstacles in your life, how you put action behind those lowest moments that will really shape your life and the outcome of your life, I think. And just keep leaning into being open, to being curious, to just leaning into the things that make you happy, that bring you joy, that bring you to the people who are doing the things in life that inspire you, and that who you want to be a part of, or how you want to be a part of. And yeah, there's just so many possibilities in this crazy world.
Yeah.
Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep doing what you're doing and being vulnerable and sharing. And it's inspiring to me. You've always been inspirational to me, but even more so now, just sharing your story. And I think it's going to inspire even more people. So I can't wait to hear the feedback.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, babe. All right, I think that's as great as anywhere.
All right, over and out.
You give me a hug.
Shake hands, maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us for this special episode of the SickBurnPodcast. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who might need a little light in their darkest moment. It really helps us grow and reach more people who could use some hope. It was an honor to sit in as a guest host today and share my husband Thomas's story. From a catastrophic plane crash to becoming a burn survivor and amputee to now inspiring others through his voice, passion, and podcast. His journey is a powerful reminder that healing is possible and that love, purpose, and joy can still be found after unimaginable loss. Follow us at SickBurnPod for more episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and weekly inspiration. Until next time, aloha and take care.